All right, so this setting helps VS Code validate our code that actually it will execute, that there's no syntax problems and so on, right? So you search for it here, then you click on edit here, right? And then what we need to put in here, we need to put a path to your PHP executable. So for most of you, let me actually check an example, because sometimes we need double backslashes. I just need to check this. Okay, so let's just look at an example. I know it should be in here. I don't know if we yeah, just check an example here. So what they say. Aha, there we go. See, this is the bizarre part. Okay, so the path to it is, for almost all of you, is going to be this C. Now the weird thing is normally there are backslashes in the path to something on Windows, but actually in this case exactly we're using slashes. So C XAMPP, so it's a slash, not a backslash. C XAMPP PHP PHP.exe. I'm fairly sure this is the one that we need to use. I'm just going to check it here. So C XAMPP PHP, and there you have it. There you go. There's a PHP.exe right there. Okay, guys, you go to file preferences settings. That's how you open settings. Okay, it's just instead of backslashes in the path, you have slashes. That's something we're going to see in one more instance in this course. All right, so save the file, Control S will do it, right? And then you can close it. I changed a couple more things, but just for my personal pleasure, I prefer bright things than dark. Usually, I teach during the day, not so much at night. So a brighter theme works better for me. You can change that too here. Right. Anyway, I'll let you guys play with it another time. All right, so let's close this off. We're good. We're good. All right, so let's go back to yesterday. So we did the minimum maximum form of submission. Yeah, that went well. Okay, and your homework was to create, we did this one, right? Hello age. So you guys finished this? Not sure. Okay, yeah, you guys were working on it, right? Now I remember. All right, so let's check it. So first thing here was we need, we said to say hello, name and age, verify the submission has been received, right? Now, the tricky part here, I think, if it hasn't been received, then you display the form. And if it has been received, then you should not be displaying the form, right? So the form will show up sometimes, and sometimes it will not. In most internet sites or internet applications, forms will have three states, so to speak. There's going to be the first time you show a form, which is when it's empty. Then the second state, when, well, there's actually second and third. Second state, submission happened, but it failed, which means what? You show the form again and you show a list of errors. And the third state is when you have a submission that was successful. Usually you don't show the form again. Think about it. If you are logging into an application, right? You type your username and password, login succeeds, you say you get an information that you succeeded at logging in. You will not see the login form again, will you? Right? It won't be there. But if you fail at logging in, you're going to see the form again. And the same goes for register, for almost any form out there, right? You succeed, you don't see the form. You fail, or for some reason the submission fails, you see the form again with a list of errors, problems, and so on. Okay, and we want to do the same thing. So I know that in many tutorials that you may have seen, sometimes they tell you that you should have two files. One is the file with the form, one is with the file that will receive the submission. We do not do that. This is not 1990s. We do not do that, not anymore. Okay. Also, you are forbidden from using redirections until I change my mind in about 10 days or so. Okay. So in your projects, once we get past next, well, somewhere mid next week, we go back, maybe I'll let you use redirections. Until then, no, because it sounds like a cool idea. It just isn't. It is not necessary, it's not useful, and it certainly gets confusing. So no redirections. Okay. I will talk about redirections. I think I have a video actually pre-recorded for you to watch on that subject. So for now, we'll have to finish off the forms. Yesterday, I showed you a way of handling the form, handling the errors. We're going to build on that. What I'm about to show you is exactly what I expect you to use in your projects and everywhere else. In the quiz upcoming next week, probably Tuesday. It seems like we're going to Tuesday. So quiz on Tuesday, projects, everything else. It's called tri-state form, and well, you'll see in a moment how this works. All right, one more rule, guys. We will not be using forms that submit information in the URL. All right, when you were registering to any website, when you press register, did you see all your information, your email, your new password, and all that in the URL there? No, you never do. Right? When you were logging in, did you see your username and password in the URL there? No, you never do. When you're doing anything that had to do with a form on any website, did you see it up there in the URL? I bet there is just about one exception to it, which means there is one case when you do see things up there. If it's a search form, you're searching for something, right? And the designers of the website wanted you to have an option to bookmark your search. So you can, type your search terms, choices, whatever. Sometimes there's advanced options to the search, and then you press search, and then the URL has all the information, right, that you just entered, and you could actually bookmark it. Now you're not bookmarking the content you're seeing, but rather you're bookmarking kind of the query you're sending to the system to see the list of results. Right? It's kind of like, Kijiji would be a great example. Right? Let's actually do that. Why not? I'm a big fan of Kijiji. I mean, especially pre-pandemic, I thought it was always fun to shop. So let's see, what should we search for? Anybody is on the lookout for something interesting? Give me an idea. No ideas? All right.
Chair.
Chair. All right. IKEA chair. There we go.
Yeah, desk, but for
Desk. All
office.
Right. Desk for the office. That's fine too. Okay. Guys, look at this. They do a little bit of magic there, so it doesn't show up after the question mark like it would for us, right? But look, it's there in the URL, right? The terms that you enter. Now they do it on purpose because they're optimizing for search engines. Because if I Google, that's an interesting thing. So if I Google Kijiji, what do they say? Office chair, right? Montreal. This URL may actually, it's not coming up exactly, but it's close. There's office chairs. Right? If I go here, there's office chairs, so it's close. Excuse me. Okay, so but it does show up in the search. I would need to find a simpler website probably for that. Search docs. Let's try this one. Quiz, whatever. Let's see how this works out here. What do they do? All right, good. Look, they have a say my search term Q quiz is up there. Okay, and same thing of course with Google. I search for ABC, and here's my query. Now there's a lot of other information in there. That's true. It's an advanced system, but basically, yes, the query shows up, which means what? I can bookmark it. Okay. It goes into my browsing history too, right? If I look at my history, it's going to show up there, right? What I had in the URL. Okay. So why are we talking about it? Because pretty much all the forms that you have on the internet are not gonna send their data through the URL. They will send it behind the scenes. And to do that, we set the form to use method, that's what it's called, method post. Many tutorials use all caps. Post like this works lowercase and uppercase, it doesn't matter in this case. Right, and what it does, it tells the form to send the data behind the scenes. Now, this is not really a security feature. The data needs to be normally these days encrypted between your web browser and the web server, right? Because we're using HTTPS. You see this thing up there? There is a lock here that tells me that this uses HTTP plus SSL protocol. Not sure if you guys can see that. There's an S there, right? Which means what? Is HTTP is the basic protocol we're using to communicate with web server, right? And S means that encryption layer is added. SSL or TLS is the same thing. Okay, so that's a security feature, right? Whether we're using get, by the way, the default, which we don't have to specify, the default is get, right? That's the default method. If we don't specify it, it is get. So as I said, it's not really a security feature, except the one change that whatever you're submitting will not show up in the URL. Okay, so from now on, unless there is a reason to use get, you will always use forms that have method post in them. Okay, clear? Always post. Always post. Okay, next. So now we have, as I said, three possibilities. One is we are receiving submission, yes or no. So there's actually the first thing is, the first state is we're not receiving a submission. This is the first show, right? So the way to test it is, we did that before. If is set, and I just need to test one of them. Let's say post of name, right? If it is set, then we are receiving a submission, right? Else, for a show. All right, now why would I, actually I need to switch to PHP, of course. Okay. Now, do I really need the else? Why would I need the else? Well, I do, because the form, again, in almost all the instances, not always, but most instances, it depends. This one, you need to look at the specific behavior that you need. But in most instances, if the submission is successful, you do not show the form. Not always, but most cases, right? If I register successfully, I don't see the registration form anymore. If I log in successfully, I don't see the login form, right? You guys are with me? Okay. So what I need to do, sometimes I need to display this form, and sometimes I do not, which means that it cannot be in here, because whatever is here, this is the direct, we call it the direct output, right? We said that this is just being sent by PHP to the web browser, no questions asked. It's just being sent, meaning is what? It's going to happen always. And that's not good for me right now, because I need to have control over whether the form is sent or not. Sometimes it needs to be sent, and sometimes it does not need to be sent. So I need to have a control over that. So the way to do that for now, which is a weird thing, but we have to do that until I show you the tools after quiz number 1. Okay, we're going to do it this way. We're going to create a function. Let's call it display form. Why not? Okay. And in it, now we could write echoes, right? We could do echo, 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 right? You could do, essentially, I could do something like this. I could do echo, right? Could do that and do that for the other lines. Yeah, I could, right? That's one way to do it, and totally works. But it just gives me an opportunity to show you another thing. It's called here doc. All right, so these are different types of strings. How can you write them in PHP, right? So you can have, single quoted strings, and you can have some special characters in them, but you can also have what is known as, hang in there, this one, here doc. Okay, So the way this works, it uses this strange operator, less, right? And then you give it, this is a marker. You make it up. You decide what it is. You can say Santa Claus, whatever, right? And then everything from that point on until the marker will be essentially, well, in this case, assigned to a variable. So they have some other examples here. Okay, here's a good one. Here they say, grab this, right, which is this text, right, and then pass it as a parameter to echo. So they're actually displaying it. Not the most useful thing to do, but it's okay. Okay, so how would it look here? Well, I could just say form equals less, and I'm going to call it end marker. And then in here, I can just copy, well, actually I cut and paste this, and then I said end marker, semicolon. And that's it. So what it does is, the good thing about it, so you could say, hold on, couldn't you just put quotes around it? Yeah, I could, but look, I already have some quotes in here. It looks better this way. It just does, right? So we're going to use here though. Now, the one kind of tricky thing here is that the end marker, depending on the version of PHP, the end marker may need to be aligned to the left with no spaces, no tabs in front of it. Okay, and we would have to test it if the new version of PHP allow you to indent it, like, you know, I could put a few tabs in front. Maybe yeah, maybe I need to indent it just like the first one was. Not sure. Yeah, we would have to test it actually running the by running the script. But anyway, so normally the end marker is whatever it is at the very beginning of the line, no spaces in front of it. By the way, this thing here could be anything. You make it up. Right? If I want to say XYZ, fine, the marker will be XYZ, right? I just changed my mind. Right? So you could just go with things like and don't forget the semicolon at the end here, right? So what's going to happen is it takes this text, all of this, right, and writes it to or saves it in a variable form. In this case, that's a local variable. Okay, and then I'm not going to do anything fancy. I'm just going to do echo form because that's what I want to do. So why would I do that? Because I want to be in control when the form is displayed or not. Because for the first show, I do want to display the form, right? Definitely. So I'll do it here. But so we're going to say that was state one, right? State one for show. But the other two, not sure. We'll see. So now, if we're receiving a submission, right? If we're receiving a submission, we want to do the things we did before, which is extract the data, because now we know we have them, right? So I'll do post of, let's do name, and then age, the usual. By the way, there's also another super global, which is, I think was it params? What was it? Request, yeah, this one. This one works regardless whether it's a get or a post. If it's a get, it will give you the data. If it's a post, it will give you the data. So if you're not sure if this code is receiving information from a get or a post, you can also use request. It works for both of them. Okay, now in this case, I'm absolutely positive I will have a post submission, so no problem here. I'll use the post super global instead. And then let's get to verify. Inputs, yeah. Right, so if I'm verifying inputs, I will need my array of errors, right? So I'll say error list, I'll initialize it as an empty array, right? And then we'll do our checkup, right? So I got a few things here to check, such as what they say, what was the length? 50 characters long. All right, so if strlen of name is less than 2, or strlen of name is greater than 50, then we need to do push there. So let's do error list, append to it, name must be 250 characters long, something like this, right? And that's good. And the second thing would be for for the integer. Now for this one, I would need to do the same thing we did, or was it random? I think that was here. No, we had some nice verification here. There we go. So I need this, right, to verify that the value is actually an integer. So I'll start with that. So I'll say if the age parses to a valid integer, actually if it doesn't, I should say, right? If it doesn't parse to a valid integer, or what else? What else could be problematic? Well, if the age is less than 0 or age is greater than 150. So no Vulcans, right? Because they get older than that. Then we'll say, well, the same thing, error list append, and we'll do age must be a number between 0 and 150, right? Do we have to validate this? Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, because otherwise there's a, if technically, if I did not allow for a 0, then this check, those two would be sufficient. But if I am allowing for a 0, did I say 0 or not? Oh yeah, okay, I'm changing, okay, just because I just changed your homework. I'll say from 0. Yeah, because if you're allowing for 0, you must use this validation, right? We already did explain why yesterday. All right, forward. So now I gotta check. Did I what? Did I have any errors? So if error list, so if there are errors, so that will be my state 2. State 2, submission with errors, so failed, right? Else, no errors, good. So state 3, submission successful, right? Okay, so now if the submission has failed, you see, I will want to display the form one more time. But if the submission is successful, I do not display the form. You see, that's why I need this extra function here, right? Because now I can decide, do I want to show it? Here and here I do. But in state 3, which is successful submission, I do not show the form again, right? In most cases. Okay, so now for the submission of errors, well, I usually want to show the errors too. So I'll just display them above the form. So I'll just do my, the usual. So we'll do echo. Let's do UL. Let's give them some CSS. So let's do class, because we haven't done this one. Error message. Yeah, let's do that one. For each error, list as error. Let's display them. So let's just do echo. Actually, let's do this. Li error. And that's fine. And then let's just close it. So let's do echo UL. And that should do it, right? I think so. Yeah. So then we have the last one, submission successful. And the only thing we wanted to do here was echo to just inform the user submission. Oh no, hold on. No, we actually were supposed to say hello, right? Hello, name, you are age, years old. So you can say, hold on, well, you didn't really show us much new. Well, we're not done yet. There is a couple more things we want to do with this. All right, so let's test it first, and then we move to actually using it. Basically expanding it. So localhost first, hello age. All right, so the form shows up. If I just press say hello, there you go. Here are my errors, right? So that's what I am in case 2 or state 2, right here. Not bad. Let's say I just put 1. There is okay, so there is an issue there with the name checking. Somehow there is an issue with the submission. See, I put the name in, but it still says name must be 250 characters long. So there must be a glitch there. All right, so I just fixed this right over here. Let's try this again. There we go. You see, so now name was okay, age is not okay. Notice that the name disappears. Unfortunately, again, this is not quite what we see on the internet, right? If I fill in a form and some items are valid and some items are not, the valid ones stay, right? The ones that were invalid usually disappear most of the time, right? You see the arrows, hey, you didn't put this one in correctly, and that value usually disappears. So we might want to do that too. We actually will. So let's just see, does this one work? Let's try this. There you go. No form visible here, right? No form. Okay. What else? So now let's do the form modification where the form keeps the information that is actually okay. So let's say, let's just start over. Okay, so let's say I enter age 23 and the name is X. So the name is invalid, so it's too short, right? But the age is okay. So when I press say hello, I get the information about the name being invalid, but the age should stay, right? I should still see the 23 over here. Okay, so the way to do that, the way we're going to do it for now, is we will give this form over here, this function for display form, we're going to give it some parameters. We'll say, listen, let's give it a name and age as a parameter, which by default will be just empty strings. So if I don't provide them, they are default values. You guys, we didn't play much with default values. Java doesn't have default values, and in C#, I don't think we had an opportunity. So essentially the way this works is that now I can call display form either providing it 0 parameters, 1 or 2, right? If I don't provide those parameters, then they will take on those default values, which are empty strings. Okay, so once I do that, I'll add to the form this. I'll say value over here, which is what whatever the initially I want to see in here, will be whatever was provided as a parameter, and for the number the same thing. See, there we go. And then there is another modification I need to make. So when I'm displaying the form for the first time, I don't have my name and age yet. So display form without parameters works fine. But over here, not so. See, over here, if there was a problem, I could actually say, well, let's remember what the name and age were. Right? When we redisplay them, let's put them in here in HTML as the initial values. Right? Let's see how that works. Let's start over. So I say name, Jerry, and age, let's say negative. Okay. Say hello. Says age must be between 0 and 150. But you see, it kept them both, even if they are both invalid, actually. There you go. You see, it keeps them there. Right. Upon submission, you see, if I look at the HTML, right, the values are here. Right. The initial values displayed. Okay, so that's almost good, except I would say that if name is invalid, I should probably not display it. So I might just set it to an empty string over here, and then the same thing goes for age. If the age was invalid, I would just set it to an empty string as well. All right, that's usually what I want to do. So let's try this again. Start over. So in this case, if I say name, let's say X23, submit. The 23 stays because it's valid, but name disappeared. Okay, and vice versa. Right, now Jerry should stay and the age should disappear. There you go. Right, so the age was invalid, disappeared, but Jerry, the name is okay, so it stayed. Right, so now that is finally starting to look like a little bit like the kind of form behavior that we normally see in the nature. Right. We do not display the form upon successful submission, right? There you go, no form, right? And also, we keep the values upon invalid submission that were okay. So especially if you're filling up a long form, like registration forms, right? They sometimes have like, 10 fields or so, more than that sometimes, right? So you're filling it all, and then you press submit, and the system says, your password didn't have a special character, submission invalid, and then it shows you an empty form. You just spent 3 minutes or 5 minutes filling it up. You'd be really pissed, right? Like, this is some crappy system. What is it, 1990s? and like bad version of 1990s, right? So we don't want to do that. Okay, so from now on, you guys will have to use this approach that I just showed you. All right, so let's talk about CSS. Let's talk about CSS. So there are 3 ways to add CSS to your HTML, right? One is external CSS. This is what we use most of the time. Why? Because usually when you create a web page, as you already know, because you did your courses, right? You have one set of styles that you're going to use on all the pages that you have, on all the HTML that you have. So you don't have separate copy of your CSS styles inside of every HTML file. That would be counterproductive, right? Because if you make an adjustment for one, you want to make an adjustment for all of them, right? So this is the approach that we use most of the time, and we're actually going to use that one as well. Second one is internal CSS. Yes, we can use that one. We can actually include the styles in inside of HTML. We can do that too. There are sometimes reasons why we want to do that. So for example, if there are certain styles that you will not use on any HTML pages, just this one, or I should say PHP scripts, but just this one, then that's okay. You could actually do it this way, right? So if, let's say, this H1 mode setting is only applicable to this particular page, that's okay, we could do that. Third one, inline. I am not a big fan of it. We should avoid using that generally. You're saying that this particular tag will have this particular style, right? Again, if it's an absolute one-off, it's like we do it just this one time because we need to adjust something. Yeah, I suppose it's okay, right? This is kind of like, you know, in this particular spot, I need to do something. That's fine. You can do that. I'm not saying never. I'm just saying usually it's not a good idea, right? But if it's like a total one-off, just this one time in this one spot, I need to do that one thing. Yeah, that's okay. You could do that because this helps you avoid creating either ID or a class or a separate class for that one style. Then yeah, that's fine. You can do that too. So I'm not against it, but just use it sparingly. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to create we're going to create a file, styles CSS. All right, so let's add here. Is it style or styles? What did you guys use, with an S or not? Doesn't matter. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna go for styles. Styles. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna add some styles there. And the one that I will add is, let me just see my notes. I actually have a few styles there to add, but we'll start with just one. Yeah, we got the error message, right? So in here in my hello age, right, I added a little thing here. You see this? I did add a class right here. I said I will have an error message class, right? So I'll use it. So to do that, I need to kind of plug in the styles into the web page that is being generated. And the way to do that, as you guys already know, is to use link. All right, so I'll do link. The relationship is style sheet, right? And then href. So hyperlink reference, that's where the href means, is going to be styles CSS. There we go. So that should do it. Okay, so now I just plugged it in. Now, when you do that, sometimes you have to force the web browser to refresh. It sometimes just doesn't kind of get it that you added the style or modified the style. But anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. All right, so that's that. And then in the styles, we actually have to create the styles. Okay, so we'll create, or I'll create error message. That was the name of the class I had. Right, let's look at this here. I had, there you go. See, I had the class error message, right? So dot error message. And let's just make it look awful. Form weight. Yeah, I feel like I need another plugin for this because I'm not getting suggestions here like I should. Font, not form. Font. Oh yeah, there we go. They are. I just got the type. All right. So let's go with bold. And then background color, let's make it, it's gonna be awful, but I was just gonna do yellow. And color will be even worse, red. So guys, you have to do better on your projects, okay? If you do these kind of colors, I'll scream. Okay, all right. And by scream, I mean I will take away some marks if it looks that bad. All right, let's take a look at this. So go back here and I just press say hello. There you go. Right now, I cannot really ignore those problems, right? So I just added the style. Now we could do a couple more things. I will just do one more. I will just do one more here with the CSS. Most of the time we want contents to be centered, right? And at the very least, kind of, it's just easier for the eye, right? So the way to do that is, you guys already know this, I'm just gonna redo it now, right? I'll just add a div around the entire content. So I'll just say ID, let's call it centered content. Close the div just before the end of the body. That should do it. And then I need to add a couple of styles here. So if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to copy it from my notes. There's no need to retype it, but I will explain. So I'm going to set the background for the entire body to be light gray. That will end up being my left and right hand side. My left and right will be in light gray. Zero the margins, because depending on the web browser, sometimes there is a margin and padding for the body. Most of them actually have, I think it was 8 pixels or something like that, right? So I want to remove that. And then the most important thing is this one, right? That's the trick that says top and bottom margins are 0, right? No margins, top and bottom, but left and right are auto, meaning that they are equal, right? So that will effectively center the content. I do add some padding here just to make it look nicer. And for the width, guys, depending on your monitor, because I'm assuming some of you have smaller monitors or lower resolution, I try to keep the fonts of everything I'm displaying larger than I normally would, right? So for me, I will set the width to 500 pixels so I can zoom in. But for you, you might want to use the standard is 960 is a good standard. Because we still remember monitors used to have 1024 pixels horizontal, right? But there is also a scroll bar, the edges of the window. So 960 pixels was always guaranteed to be there for you to display the contents of the website. Right, so 960 that's where the standard came from. I didn't make it up. It's actually, if you look at different documentation and best practices, that's what they use. Now you could go higher, right? Because this way you could say today, well, hold on, most monitors today, they have at least 1280, or usually most of them are widescreen. So they're like, 1920. That's true, all true. I'm not disputing that, but you can always zoom in. First of all, every user can zoom in, right? I actually had a call with my father yesterday, and he was asking me, why are those fonts so big? I'm like, okay, hold on. We did a team viewer session, right, with his computer back in Europe. And I said, okay, no problem. Here's what you do. You press Control minus, because he was viewing a website and for some reason the fonts were like really big. So I said, just press Control minus, right? Zoom out. And he's like, oh, this is good. I like that. Nice trick. So anyway, this will, for me, I'll keep 500 and you guys will go with something like 800, 960, whatever works for you. Okay, background color white, yeah, because it just looks better this way. Let's save this and let's see if I reload. I do. There you go. Okay, it's a good start. I'm not saying this is perfect. I still have this gray area here at the bottom. That's true, but it's not a big deal. Well, you could say, hold on, you should add some spacing here. Totally, guys, we could spend an hour a day doing CSS, and you will when you're doing your projects. Okay, for the purpose of quizzes and tests and so on, we'll use some basic CSS, just a few styles to make it look decent, like centering the content of the website, web page, right? But of course, you should adjust styles here and so on. And did you guys do Bootstrap? You did. Okay, great. So you guys will be using probably Bootstrap. I recommend that you do in your projects, not during the course. We're not doing that during the quizzes and tests and so on. But during your projects, Bootstrap is highly recommended. But we'll get to it, well, in 10 days or so. All right. Okay, so any questions on this? Any questions on this? I will push it to Bitbucket. Yes, I will. It's time to plug in the database. Right, we haven't done that yet. That is a big missing piece that we need to take care of right now. So let's do that. Yeah, this will actually be sufficient. Let's go and make sure that in your XAMPP, you're running in your control panel, make sure your MySQL is on, it should be, right? And then click on admin, the second admin for MySQL, click on that button. All right, that should open. Exactly, phpMyAdmin. Yeah, so give it a few seconds, let it start up. I'll close the rest. And yeah, there we go. All right, so you should be seeing something like this. Okay, so on the left-hand side, these are databases. Don't remove them, they're all necessary. MySQL is a database that contains settings, users, and whatnot, and the other ones are, well, the phpMyAdmin is used by, well, phpMyAdmin. The test, this one, if you really want to remove it, you could. This one is just a test database. Does it even have anything in it? Probably not. Yeah, there's nothing there. But yeah, don't mess with those, especially those four. Don't touch them. Okay, they have to be there. All right, let's create a new. By the way, anybody is not seeing database phpMyAdmin. I need to know because there is a reason for it. Anybody is not seeing the database phpMyAdmin right now. Okay, all right, good. So guys, click on new. Click on new on the left, and the database name, let's say, let's call it, what should we call it? Let's hold on a sec. What should we call it? Just checking my notation here. Let's do day 01 people. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna keep things lowercase here. So day 01 people. And there we go. The collation is okay. UTF-8 and before general CI. What does that mean? That means you can use Unicode. UTF-8, I don't want to get into the history of computing here, but UTF-8 means it's an encoding that allows us to mix different languages on a single, well, database here or on a single web page, right? That is the default encoding that we use pretty much everywhere these days. So UTF-8, right? That's the one we want. And press create. There we go. I'm just going to check the settings here. Yeah, it's already good. Yeah, we're good. All right, so day 01 people. Actually, hold on. We are on day, we're technically day 2. Oh, well, that's okay. We call it day 1 as day 1. It's done. So now create the table. We're gonna have to, we're gonna need 3 columns. We're gonna need the ID, name, and age, right? So let's create a table people. Please never call the database the same way you call the table. That creates confusion. Because right now we're doing small examples where there is one table in one database. I know that, but just, you know, don't give them the same names. People, lowercase, right? We're going to be using camel case notation in terms of naming, like Java notation, right? Where the first word is lowercase and the second ones are have their first letter capitalized, right? So people, yeah, just press go. Don't worry about the columns. Right. All right, so I have table people, column names, ID, lowercase, name, lowercase, age, lowercase. You guys are doing this with me right now, not later. Okay, so I got my ID, name, age. The fourth one, you can leave it empty, it just won't be used. ID is an integer, name is varchar, age is an integer. varchar length is the same as what we were verifying here. So up to 50 characters long. All right, so we'll say varchar 50. And then very important, we need to get some artificial intelligence, right? So you see there's AI here, right? So add artificial intelligence for ID, right? It will set up a primary key here on ID. And I'm just kidding about the artificial intelligence is of course auto increment. All right. All right. So always set auto increment and primary key on the ID. Right. All the tables will always have a primary key. Even if you have another primary key that you could use, yes, you will always have ID integer auto increment primary key, always. What if I have a database with, I don't know, student IDs where every student has a unique ID? That's fine. Create another field, make it a unique index. That's okay. But every table will have as the very first column an ID integer primary key auto increment, always. Right? The same goes for .NET or any other platform that you're using where you have identity doing the same thing. All right, so one more time, ID integer auto increment primary key. Nothing is nullable, that's okay. Name varchar 50, age integer, that's it, we're good. Scroll down, press save. There we go, here's our table. If I click on browse on the left-hand side, it shows there is no data in here. You see, I see the column names over here, but there's no data, right? It says 0 rows. That's okay, I haven't inserted any data yet. Everything is not null, yeah. So the checkbox is off, Vladimir, right? If the checkbox is off, so in PHPMyAdmin, it is not null by default. You don't have to do anything. There's no reason for any of those columns to be nullable. All right, so now let's see that. In terms of connecting to a database, we usually would assume that we have multiple, how would I say that we need to access the database from multiple PHP files. Because if I have, I don't know, login file, register file, and so on, I usually would have a single connection for all the PHP files. So there's going to be a little bit of code, maybe 10 lines or so, that connects us to the database. Instead of copy pasting it all over the place, what we prefer to do is we prefer to place the code to connect to the database in a separate file, and then use that file, right, inside of any PHP script that that needs to connect to a database. Okay, so do this with me. Create here db.php. db.php. At the very top, so please, no spaces, no tabs, nothing up there, nothing. At the very, very top, the very first thing on the very top is opening the PHP. Okay, and then we need to use, there's something called MySQLi connect, right? And this one requires that we provided with information about the host to which we're connecting, username and password, and the name of the database, and possibly some port and other information, right? So there's a bunch of information here we need to provide. So we'll take care of that in just a second. I just realized we did it kind of the wrong way. We created a database, and that's nice. But normally what we do is we create a user and a database together, and we let that user have permissions to that database, right? Because to be able to connect to the database, you have to provide the name of the user and a password, right? And in this case, we don't have a user, so we're going to have to manually create it. Next time, I'm going to show you a better way to do that, faster way to do that, but for now, we'll deal with it. So click on the PHPMyAdmin logo on the left, or you can click on the server over here, whichever you prefer. Let's go back up here and click on user accounts. Do this with me. So user accounts, you see, right now, I do have some accounts. There is the root account, but I don't really want to be using the root account to access the database. That is not a good practice at all. And what was okay on a desktop is not okay on the web at all. So we pretty much never do that. So we want to create a new user, right? So click on add user account. And I just realized we should have, you know what we'll do? I'm thinking here's what we'll do. We'll do it the right way. We're going to create in a moment, we're going to create a user, we're going to create a database, we're going to give them permission, that user permissions to the database. And then we're going to move, if we can, table people. We'll see if we can move it to a different database. We'll try that. All right. So do this with me. Let's say day 02 people. So you guys have day 01. We're going to create day 02. This is the right procedure. That's what we should have done from the start. And then host name, you must change it local. It's a weird thing, but if you say any host, it probably won't work. At least it didn't used to in the previous version. So you must change this to local. And it changes the name to localhost over here. Password. Generate. And then, very important, there is a checkbox here. You see this one, the first one here? It says create database with the same name and grant all privileges. Okay, so make sure that the checkbox is checked. The first one only, not the second, the first one only. Okay, you will always do that. All right, so now that we have that information, let's put that in here in the PHP file, because we need it for, exactly, you don't have to memorize it. I'm kidding, of course. All right, let's add it here. So DB user will be day 02 people. DB pass is, exactly, we're going to copy the password from here. Now, do not press generate again. Do it once and then copy the password from here. All right. Then we have DB name. So name of the database is the same. So day 01 people. Excuse me, day 02. My bad. 02. Day 02. Because now we have two databases, very similar names. Careful there. And then DB host will be localhost colon 3333, because the port is different for us. Normally, you won't need that chunk, it will be just localhost. But because we moved our database server to listen on a different port, we have to specify that port. Okay, so that should be okay. Now, don't type my password, copy your password, right? The one from here. Okay, and that's what you want to have in DBPHP, and I'll type up the rest. So now the connection is to DB host using DB user and DB pass to DB name. There we go. Okay, now when I connect, it may fail. So I need to actually check if connection failed. By default, most PHP functionalities do not throw exception. Now, guys, PHP has almost the same functionalities as Java has in terms of exceptions, inheritances, and whatnot. But most of the time, we don't use those, not exactly. So I will have to do the old style verification here. I'll check. Tell me if there was error while we were connecting. And if there was, I'll just display a message. And I'll terminate the program. So MySQL connect error. That this one will give me, no, not error, no, error. This one will give me a textual description. So this one gives me a code. This returns a 0 if there is no error. or returns an error code if there was a problem. And this one gives me a description. This is error no, and this is error, two different things, right? This gives me a message that will tell me what the problem was. And then I'll just do exit, right? Halt the script. And that's it. So I'll give you a minute or so to do the same. Guys, there's a dot here. See this? There's a dot. Not a plus. Guys, if you do this, the echo will display 0. So in PHP, plus operator is used solely, which means exclusively, for numerical values. It does not concatenate. In most other languages, such as JavaScript, Java, C#, plus operator is used for concatenation, putting strings together, but in PHP is not. You must use a dot. You have a string that you want to glue with another string or another value, you must use a dot. If you use a plus, you're essentially going to get a 0. The whole thing, if I use a plus, this whole thing will display 0. Okay, it's a dot. So now we're going to try and move. Okay, we didn't finish this one. So now go back to creating the user, because we have not created the user yet, right? It's already. So let's just double check. Do not change anything. I mean, do not regenerate the password, for example, right? So we've got the username is going to be day02 people. A new database will be created with that username with that name as well, right? Host name is set to local. Password was automatically generated. We saved it in the db.php file. We clicked on the first checkbox only, right? Then we scroll all the way down and you press go. Do it right now. Don't save the password. Yeah, I know web browsers suggest that they might. Don't do that. There's no point. Because you will never be logging in with this password using web browsers. So why clutter your web browser's cache of passwords? All right, so now we're going to try and move this table. Let's see if we can. Can I? Table options, copy. Okay, there is a copy. There's a copy. All right. So do this with me. So now click on, so now you have 2 of those. You have day02 and day01 people. So click on day01 people table, this one. That's the one we created a few, well, 15 minutes ago, right? And then go to operations. We might as well get familiar with PHPMyAdmin, why not? Right, because I don't want to be recreating the table since we already have it. We can just either copy or move it. So go to operations.
Excuse me, I don't have more in the menu.
But you have operations. Because the more depends on your size of the screen.
Yeah.
Now it's there.
Yes, I have operations.
Okay, good. So click on operations, and then we'll have, there is a move here, right? You just click on, you change the database, you say move it to day02 people right here, right? Change it, and then press go. That's it. It says it's been moved. So now if I click on day2 people, there's a table, and day01 has nothing. See that? So now we can actually discard the database day01. You see the one that's empty. We can go to operations again, and we can, where is that? Drop the database. Now, please make sure you're dropping the database that is empty. See, that's the one listed on top here. That's the one you're operating on. You see the day1 people, right? So I'll click here on drop the database. I say, yes, I do. There we go. Now it's gone. Okay, so we did a little bit of database maintenance this morning. Why not? Not a bad idea. Okay. Fast and easy, yes. Well, it's a new tool. Personally, I like it. And as I said, this is the tool that is used most often by web developers. So we want to make sure you guys are familiar with it. Okay. So time to test it. So now we have the DB-PHP, we have the database with an empty table, right? And time to plug it in. So what I'd like to do is we're going to create a copy of the hello H. So let's do that one. Let's create a new hello HDB and just copy the entire contents. Just make a copy of it. I want to keep the old one and I'll just copy that into the new file. Okay, that's all I'm doing. Hello HDB, right? I'll just copy it all. No changes so far. All right, now it's time to make it work. So the way to make it work is, first of all, we need to connect to the database. We're going to use something called require once. So in here under PHP at the very beginning here, once we open PHP, we're going to do require. Now there is a few here. There is include once, require, and require once. There's 4 functions. They do similar things. What they do essentially, so if I do, for example, if I did, let's just do the require once, which it should be. So this is the one I want, right? This is an equivalent as if I copied this whole thing and pasted it here. You see this or that are going to have the same effect. Essentially, I'm telling PHP, listen, just read in the contents of DB-PHP right here as if I typed it up, as if the code was right there. Okay, that's what it's going to do. So it helps us avoid code duplication, right? The DB-PHP acts like a reusable piece of code, kind of like a small library, right? We just say require it, right? So include it in here. Now, as I said, there are 4 functions. There is include once, require once. We do not want to use include, and the reason is include, if DB-PHP doesn't exist, include will issue a warning, but it will not be a fatal error. Require, if DB-PHP doesn't exist, it will be a fatal error if DB-PHP doesn't exist or is not readable. So for example, here, if I add, something to it, and I access my, let's see if I can do that. Localhost, the one first. There you go, see? Fatal error, right? It stopped the script for the most part. It's a fatal error, right? So require, if there's a problem reading the file, it's a fatal error. Include, it wouldn't be, okay? Also, why require once? Well, because we only need to open the database once per script. So if I had, for example, guys, if I do this 3 times, guess what's going to happen? The first one will read in the DB-PHP and the other 2 will do nothing, because PHP will remember, oh, we already did read in DB-PHP once. We don't have to do it again. Okay, you see, if I do that, see, no errors there. And also the database, well, I can prove, actually, yeah, I can prove it to you. Hold on. If I put, let's just do something. Don't do that. Let's just a demo, echo once. Yeah, let's do this. So see, it says once, only once, right? Even though I did require once 3 times. But if I did require, say I got this 3 times. So the DB-PHP was read in 3 times. That's why we pretty much always use require once. And of course, there's no point doing that multiple times, so we just do it once. Okay, all right, good. So that should connect us to the database. Now, did it? I think it did, because if it didn't, we would have gotten an error. You see, there's the fatal error over here. So for example, if I mess up the password, you see, if I mess up the password, oh, it's something there. Fatal error, access denied for user, blah, 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 right? You see that? Yeah, by the way, this warning, we should probably nullify it. There is a nice way to do that. No, not here. It's here. There we go. All right. So what happens here is that when I messed up my connection, or it just didn't work right, I get this weird warning over here. I don't really like that one. See this one? I didn't intend on it because I'm not controlling this message. This is just coming from PHP. Okay. What I really wanted is just this part of the message, fatal error, because I control it. So usually what we do in this case is we suppress a warning or an error. And guys, I'll show you how to do it, but it's an exceptional situation that we use it. Okay. Do not use it to just avoid writing proper code. That's not what it's for. There are some situations where we don't want to see the warning or an error. Why? Because we handle it ourselves. See right here, I got the if. So even if the connection fails, that's okay, because I will check for it and I'll handle it myself. So I don't need an error message being or a warning being displayed by line number 8 here. So you can do this with me, put an at in front of the MySQL connect call. Okay, when you do, right now, you see, even if there's a problem, this line 8 doesn't display a warning or an error at all. Rather, I get to handle the problem myself, and I do. Okay. All right, good. So let's bring it back to normal. So now I'm quite confident the connection to the database has worked fine. Time to put some information into the database, which will mean doing an insert. And you guys think this is going to be easy? Well, it's not complicated, but we have to talk about it. All right, so let's just say we will, in state 3, right here, before we do echo, hello, yeah, and so on. Actually, after, let's, let me think about it. Well, technically, the way this usually works is that you want to perform database operations first, and then you want to display a message that things went well. Why? Because you see, if I display the hello first, which kind of says everything worked out fine, then if the database operations fail, I already sent this text. You see this thing? You see, you cannot unsend a text that you already sent to the web browser. So usually what we do, we perform the database operations first, and then we display whatever text we want to display, saying operation succeeded, user added, or whatever. Oh, it's 10:30, my connection is becoming unstable. I'm telling you, this is a regular thing. Yesterday was 10:50, today is 10:30. There is something going on. I haven't, no, there is, so hopefully the connection will hold. Submission successful, right? State 3. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the database operations first, and then we'll echo some information that things went well or they failed, right? You guys remember, that's just like with the exceptions. We said that there are certain reasons for exceptions whenever you want. You're parsing something, you're connecting to the internet, right? You're fetching some API values, database connections or operations, right? All of this could fail. File operations, all of those could fail. Right? Now, PHP has a lot of automatic handling for certain errors, but database errors you need to handle yourself. So we'll do that. I will show you how. So you can do that one with me. We're going to, first of all, we're going to write an SQL query. So we're going to say SQL equals, and we'll say insert into people values, and then we're going to say null. And then we're going to say name. Actually, no, we need the single quotes here. Name and then age. It's a terrible thing I just did, but we're going to start with that. By the way, for the purpose of this course, you will always capitalize. I think we did the same thing in C#, right? We'll always capitalize all the keywords of SQL, right? So insert into values and null are the keywords. And the rest, you're going to call them the way they are. Why null? Well, how many columns do you have in the table? You got 3, right? If I go here.
Yeah, but usually ID is auto increment.
It is, but the insert still needs to see it. So I have 2 choices. I could either list the columns. You see, I did not list the columns. If I did list the columns, I don't need the null. Right? If I don't list them, then the SQL query is required to provide all the values for all the columns.
Okay,
So
thank you.
this one just ends up shorter. Yeah, and it doesn't work for all databases. For MySQL, it works fine. For Microsoft SQL, I don't think this trick works with the identity generation in Microsoft SQL. I think it fails actually. Okay, so that's the insert. And then we have to, well, execute the query. So we'll say MySQLi query, and we have to give it two parameters. The first is the connection to the database, which we called link. Look, the link is a global variable created here. So in DB-PHP, we assigned to global variable link, which created it, and now we're using it right here. So the first parameter is the link to the database, and the second one is, well, the SQL query, right? And that looks good, except we need to verify if it failed, because this may fail. So we actually need an if here. So we say if this thing failed, then we'll say echo, something like this, fatal error fails to execute SQL query. And guys, we're gonna make an exception here. Because we're just learning about it, I will display the error message to the user. In a real system, and we're going to talk about it next week and the week after. In a real system, you will never display the SQL error message to the user. You will never display the SQL query back to the user. They have no business knowing about it. In fact, it may introduce security risk. You would never do that. That's why in the next part of the course, I will show you a logging library. You may remember the word monolog I mentioned. It's the name of a library we'll be using to write log information to a file so we can evaluate it later so that the user never sees it. But for the first part of the course, we're just learning the basics. It's okay, we can display error messages to the user, but because, you know, this is just day 2. But we will do better. We will do better. So MySQLi error off link. Because, so why am I passing the link around? The reason is technically you could open multiple connections to multiple databases. We pretty much never do that. I mean, how often do you have an application that has 2 databases or more? Never, pretty much never, unless you're writing some specialized application that is transferring data from one database to another. There are such translators, that's true, but that is extremely rare. So we just need to know that your connection to the database is in a global variable link and just keep using it. That's okay. That's all you need to do. Okay. All right, good. So that's called link. And then, by the way, what I just did, I introduced a terrible security problem over here. We're going to see. Oh yeah, guys, we never close the database connection. The database connection closes on its own when your script finishes. We never close it. Just like we did in C#.NET, right? We never close the database connection. Right? We just like, you know, when the program ends, the database will close. Same thing here. Yeah, there's nothing to worry about. It's a normal thing. We're not at risk of damaging the content of the database, or we're not doing anything wrong. It's a normal behavior. But good question nonetheless. All right, guys, so we're almost here, except this thing, I'm just warning you, this thing is terrible. What I just did here, if you know, I was a manager and somebody wrote code like this in a web application, I'll be really pissed. It works, but I'll tell you why this is really wrong. Yeah, you know, tutorials are one thing. It's like, guys, I told you I'm not an academic, right? I mean, I do have a lot of degrees and spend lots of time in university while doing consulting and working on my own businesses and whatnot. I'm not an academic. So there's a difference between academic knowledge and what looks good on paper versus what actually we do in the industry. They're not necessarily the same thing. That's one of those. We do not generally have a need to close database connections. Yeah, we don't. We just don't. Right. So, you know, after a while, as you learn more about programming, software, and so on, you realize that when you're reading a tutorial, like sometimes I read a tutorial and I'm like, this is wrong, this is terrible, this is bad, this is questionable. And it's just like, you know, it just keeps going. But the tutorial is still very often really good because they are focusing on a specific set of aspects. They're trying to teach you, a few things, right? And it's totally okay, because if they got into explaining those best practices, then the whole tutorial would be unreadable to the newbies, right? To people who are just starting off. It would be way longer and it would be off topic essentially, right? That's why those tutorials are the way they are, right? That's why, I can come in here and say, hey, I can teach you better than, what you're getting here during the classes, I hope, is better than just reading a bunch of tutorials, right? It should be. If you have a teacher that essentially just says, read a tutorial, then, then you'll know what you need to know. Then why do you need a teacher for it? Right. Yeah, it's okay. When you're reading tutorials, you just, at some point, you realize that they are not necessarily all that great, and that's okay. That's okay. They are focusing on certain aspects of what they're trying to teach you. All right. So as I said, this is terrible. We'll talk about it in a moment. But before we do, let's test it. So save the file. Save the file, and then let's go to the web browser, right? Let's, so we were on Hello HDB. There you go, that's the one. By the way, when you access DB-PHP alone, you could do that. Nothing will happen. It will just connect to the database and then end execution. So there's no risk here. You see, nobody can see the contents of your DB-PHP, right? Because the execution of it doesn't display anything, right? There's nothing here being displayed except maybe this, right? If there was a problem of connection. So it's not there is no danger here. All right, so let's go to Hello HDB, right? And let's do, of course, Jerry, right? 33, whatever, put something there, say hello. And it says, hello, Jerry, you are 33 years old. Okay, that's nice, but let's go to the database now. Click on people and click on browse if you need to. Look at this. I just got a new record right here. Here it is, right? All right, let's test it some more. So go back. Let's put some new data in. So let's say Eva, right? Say hello. Okay, let's go here, click on browse again, and you should see another record. Always try to insert at least 2 records to test it. If you can insert 1, that's nice. 2 allows you to make sure that it actually works properly, especially the auto increment. If there is an issue with your auto increment setting, then the second insert will fail. What usually happens is that the first insert creates ID 0, and the second insert tries to do the same, and the second one fails. Okay, so go ahead and insert maybe 3 records, yeah. Right, let's go right here. I got 3 of them. Okay, any questions so far? Now, why is this wrong? Why is this wrong? Because I am not controlling the contents of it. Well, yes or no, right? Here I say, well, the name could be 50 characters long. Let me show you how this can go wrong. Okay, so let's talk about this. So this is that's my query. Let's copy this here and let's do the tasks and discussion, right? Let's talk about this. So this is called SQL injection. Very dangerous thing. So here's my query, right? So I have the name and the age are parameters, and it looks like it's, it's all good because I will insert the name, insert the age. Well, kind of. There is a few issues with it. I'm just going to show you just one. What if in my documents I say Tommy's friend, let's do 51, right? So there's an apostrophe over here, right? There's apostrophe here, and I'll say hello. Whoopsie, look what I got. It says you have an error in your syntax, right? So this is actually good because actually I did see the error. So what happened? Well, because so let's just rewrite this. So what happens is that this became 42, and this was Tommy's friend, right? You see the problem? There's a single quote over here, right? So what we need to do, we need to make sure that this single quote is escaped, right? It has to have a backslash in front of it, because otherwise it messes up our SQL syntax. Well, that's all true, but that doesn't actually tell us how big the issue is. Let me show you how big the issue is. For example, if I don't take care of escaping single quotes and some other special characters, I'm opening up my application possibly to have anyone run any SQL code they want. They could execute updates, deletes, insert, they could mess with my permissions to my application. They can essentially hack into my application, literally, get into it and steal data, right? Become an administrator or create a new administrator account. They could do whatever they want. How can they do that? Well, let me show you. So let's say this is my query, right? So I had me 37, whatever, right? That's my query. Now let's say, what do I want to do? Do you want to do delete or update? Give me a query you want to do. Some evil query. Update? We could do an update. So let's say update users where email is what do you guys say about this? What does this look like to you? So let's say somebody registered a regular account on my system with email hacker@gmail.com. Of course, they would never use that email, but let's just say, right? And then the system has roles. So there is a row, excuse me, there is a column in the table that says which role the user has. And there are normal users and there are administrators. What does it look like? Like I'm upgrading the permissions of a certain user to be an administrator, which would probably mean they have full access to the internals of the system, right? Wouldn't they? So if I allow this query to execute, that is a terrible security hole. It's just kind of like I just published my entire database and everything else on the internet. That's pretty much what I just did, right? So how could it be? Well, let's just all right. So let's just go with this. So let me show you how this goes. Let's say, so this is my query, right? So these are 3 queries. By the way, if I give this to a MySQLi query as the text over here, it will execute it. Because you guys know that you can execute multiple queries, right? One after another, after another, after another, right? You could do that in C#, right? Just separate them with semicolons, not a problem. So this is actually this whole thing. This is valid SQL. 3 queries, yes, but it's valid SQL. Now watch this. What if I say that my name is this? How about that? Or right? Say if I enter this as my name, then this will end up, right? This text will end up in here, and I'll end up with really 3 queries instead of 1. You see that? All I did is I just took the parameter that the user entered. So in the field, right, in the input field, if the user entered something like this, yes, it's a lot of typing, I know. Okay, and I allow it, right? Then this gets inserted right here without any filtering, really. Oh yes, I checked the length of the string. Okay, fine. Here the length is 50. So maybe they would have to, be smart about the SQL query just to, fit it in 50 characters. But I mean, in other cases, you have other submissions, right, in your system where probably you're allowing the user to submit text that's longer, right? Could be like in a blog, right? You can submit the body of the article or title that can be much longer. Right, so that's not really something that's going to stop the hacker every time, right? So what did I just do? I just allowed SQL injection to happen. It's a terrible thing, and you absolutely must guard against that. So how do you do that? Well, the method I'm going to show you today is as good as it gets for this part of the course. It's a little annoying, but it's effective. So the way we do that is I'm just going to copy the code actually. Instead of doing this, we're going to use something called escaping a string. So you see this thing over here takes the second parameter, and then it replaces single quotes with backslash single quote. And it does some other things to certain other special characters. It ensures that this, right, you see this query over here, this could be fine actually if you do what? If you just put back quotes over here. You see, if I put back quote over here, over here, over here, over here, over here, and over here, then that's no problem, because now this whole thing is just a string, no longer a query. I mean, it's not longer two more queries, it's just a string, right? So it will put back quotes, backslashes in front of any single quotes. That's going to be one of the things. It does a few more things. If you look at the documentation, right, for this one, there are some other things it will do, right? Some other special characters that it will escape. But the most important one is, there you go. But the most important one is the single quote. That's the one that needs to be escaped. Okay, there's also backslashes and new lines and whatnot. That's true. That's all true. But these are the most important ones. Okay, so when I do this, this prevents SQL injection, right? So what I did, I combined the escaping of the string with a printf, with sprintf actually. It's just because it seemed convenient to me. Okay, so the sprintf gives me the format, right? So here's my %s, right? And here's where I'm escaping the strings. You could say, hold on, Gregory, the second value is not a string. Well, you know, in PHP, everything is a string. So it is. It's a string. And even if it's an int, it will still work fine because the int will be converted to a string as needed. So it's a string. Okay, good, good. I'll give you this chunk. You have to use it. I will be looking for it. You forget the stuff, I will take away massive amounts of points if you forget that, because this is a huge security risk. You don't want to get fired over this kind of things. Okay. Now, in the second part of the course, I'll show you a library that will take care of this issue automatically, so you don't actually have to worry about it in almost all cases. Okay, but that's the second part of the course. Okay, I'll take any questions at this point. Anything else? So do this with me, create a new file. Let's call it session counter. Actually, just a moment. Let's just do count. Yeah, let's call it just, let's just call it counter PHP, of course. Okay. So you guys read the little document I asked you about the sessions. I know you did. Let's open PHP up there. So what we're going to do, we're going to create a little example of how the session works. Now, the session allows us to store data with the browsing session. Internally, it uses cookies. So I often get a question here, Gregory, why don't we store data using cookies? Well, we kind of are. The issue with cookies is that cookies is a piece of information that is stored on the client side in the web browser, which means that client could potentially manipulate it. See, one of the principles in web programming is that you can never trust the client. Now it sounds weird, but you don't. You see, when you were writing desktop applications, you were in control because the application was running on that particular computer, right? So if the user entered or did something wrong, the worst that can happen, the application would mess up their own computer. So they shouldn't do it, right? They shouldn't be evil to their application running on their own computer. But when you're dealing with client server applications, you will have bad actors, means, you know, hackers or people who are trying to break your system, right? Who are acting as a legitimate client, but they will try to do evil things to your application, like the SQL injection I just showed you, right? That's why we do not store any sensitive information in the cookies. We don't. We could. Cookie is a piece of information, right? It's like, essentially, it's a string. It's a chunk of text that is stored on the client side in a web browser, right? And that is being sent to the client every time the client accesses the website. Think about it this way. It's kind of like when you go to the gym, well, maybe not recently, but if you did before, right? You go to the gym for the first time and they say, oh, you're new here. We have a special, whatever, 1 week, 1 month trial. We just need to give you an ID card, right? So you get an ID card. There is a number on the ID card that is unique to you, right? So you get in the first time. The second time you're coming into the gym, if the first time didn't scare you too much, hopefully, right? Then you're coming in and what you do? You show them the ID. You scan it, you're in, right? They do not generate a new ID for you, right? So then you can go again using that ID and they know it's you, right? You're right. And then, when you scan the ID coming in, they can tell, are you on the free trial? Are you, this kind of member? Are you a gold member, right? You have access to some special saunas, right? Discounts for massages, whatever there is, right? So, but think about it this way. The information about the state of your membership is not stored on your card, is it? Right? The card is just the ID. Essentially, what they care about on the card is your ID number. So you scan it, there's a barcode or a chip, whatever, right? You scan, there's a number, right? That then their database links that number to an entry in the database, right? It checks that you're actually there, right? That your membership hasn't expired yet, because you may have a card, but the membership is expired. They won't let you in. Say, sorry, your 1 month trial has ended, or your membership has finished, right? You have to renew it. So they won't let you in, right? It's not on the card, because why? They don't trust you with it, right? It's not written on the card, your level of membership, because potentially some people could mess with it and just write, say, I'm a gold member. That just sounds wrong, but anyway. Okay, so you're not trusted with it. The only thing you got is the ID number. Okay, and it's the same thing with a cookie. Cookies generally are used to remember an ID number that allows the system to identify you, whether that ID is used to remember that you've logged in, that they are tracking you for advertisement purposes, right, across different websites. That's the kind of use they do. Advertisers do that all the time. It's a different discussion, right? But essentially what the cookie will contain is just the ID number most of the time. Maybe some other information sometimes, but usually it's just the ID number. Okay. All right. So why are we talking about it? Well, because we're about to get to sessions. You see, sessions allow us to store information on the server, not the client, on the server. Now, I know it gets confusing because in your case, we're practicing here, and our server is the same computer as the client, is it not? It is, right? Because your web browser and your XAMPP, your Apache, your PHP, all of that are running on the same computer. So it's kind of, all in one. But it's not really this way once you upload the application to an actual hosting, right? When you do that, when you upload your application to actual hosting, what's going to happen is that your PHP scripts, your MySQL database, right, and Apache will be running on a remote server, right? That's where you would be editing your PHP files, on a remote server. And your client is running on your computer at home or somebody else's computer at home. So you would have two different machines talking to each other. Client is never trusted. So the only thing it has a cookie with an ID. And the information, as I said, that session contains is stored on the server, and it pertains to any particular client, to the session of that client. Meaning what? What's a session? Well, when you open a web browser, that's a session. Your whole web browser, that's a session, right? If you want to close your session, you close the web browser. Now, some cookies are set to never expire or like expire in 5 years, and some cookies are set to expire when you close the web browser. Okay. Cookies also have an expiration date, even if your web browser is open, but you're not using the website. Some cookies will expire in 20 or 30 minutes. I think that's the default in PHP. I think the default expiration time is 30 minutes. Okay, so that it's kind of like the ID card. If you don't use it, you lose it. Right? If you don't lose the ID card, if you don't use it for 30 minutes, so it's kind of like you never come to the gym for more than whatever a month, right? They just cancel your membership. Now, I mean, they would never do that in the real world, but because they would be losing money, but in here that they would, right? Every time you go to the gym, you get another 30 days. right, of validity of your card. That's how cookies work. They have an expiration date. And as I said, also some of them are set to expire whenever you close your web browser, and some of them are to expire in 4 or 5 years. Google does that. Their cookie expiration date is, I think, 5 years or so. Anyway, so back to the session here. So what I want to do is I want to do a little demo here with you. Actually, you know what? Instead of doing this, let's just get a real HTML. So let's do remove the PHP, put the exclamation mark tab, and let's get a real document. Open close PHP here because we'll need it. Yeah, let's do a web page. And then to enable the mechanism of session, we need to call session start. Now, guys, the name is slightly unfortunate. It will start the session if you don't have one, but if you already have one, which is like the ID card, it will continue the session. So it should be called session enable, session activate, something like that, because it doesn't start a new session unless you don't have one. It's kind of like when you're going to the gym, as I said, for the first time, you don't have an ID card, you'll get one, right? But if you do have a session, which most of the time you do already, it will continue that session. Okay. And if you have a website, then this session start needs to be called for every one of the PHP files that you have on your website, not just some of them, all of them. But we'll get to that. All right, so that enables the mechanism of session. Once you have done that, there is a super global called session, which is an associative array, just like the get or post or args or any of the other ones are super globals. Session is one of them. Yes, there's also cookie. We do not use that one. There's no need to use the cookie, as I said, because usually it's not necessary or useful to us. So session. So what I'm going to do, we're going to create a counter that when you connect to the server, you open a new session for the first time, the counter will be, let's say, 1. It's going to count the number of visits in the current browsing session. Okay. See, it's about how long the data lives. If you're writing a PHP script, how long the data lives in the variables that you have. So let's say I have a variable here, name, right? How long does it live? Until the end of the script, and then once the script ends, it's forgotten, it's gone, right? Then you have the other extreme. If you insert data into a database, that's global data in the database, that's going to live on forever until you change it or delete it. So these are the two extremes. Somewhere in between, there is the session, where the data lives as long as the session exists, as long as this session of the web browser exists. That's how long the data lives. All right, so let's go here. So we're going to do this. Let me actually write it out. We're going to create an entry counter in the session, and we're going to increment it every time we visit that page, and then we're going to display it. Okay, so we'll do something like echo. Let's do a paragraph. You have visited this script count times in this web browser session. Right, let's do that. Okay. Now the problem here is there's a slight glitch here. The session of counter doesn't exist. It's undefined. So if I run this, I'm going to see some warning saying, what are you incrementing here? This is nothing. I don't have a session of counter. I cannot increment something I don't have. So that's why we have to first, check if we have it. So we're going to say if the session of counter is not set, meaning it doesn't exist yet, then we will set it to a 0. We're going to do that. So initially, so in other words, if this is essentially your first visit and you don't have a counter, then we will set the counter to 0, then we'll increment it, and then we'll display it, right? But next time when you visit, well, I mean, you have the counter, so we'll just continue incrementing and displaying it. Okay, so the behavior I want, I'll give you time in a moment to type it up as well, but let me just test it first. So the behavior I want and I expect is something like this. See, I visit the counter, it should display 1. You see, you have visited the script 1 time. Right, in this web browsing session, 1 time. When I reload, so I click on reload here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on, keeps on going, right? But look at this. If I open a different web browser, I'm going to open, let's just go with Edge. All right, so I have the Edge here. And I'll copy the same, I copy the same thing here. Right? See, it's a new session. So it says, again, from the beginning, you have visited this script 1 times, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see, those 2 are independent. Right? Those 2 are independent. More so, if I close all windows of the web browser, so I'm going to close the Edge. This is Edge. This is not, guys, I know it looks the same, but this is a different web browser. It's not the same, it's not a different window of the web browser. Yeah, incognitos will create a new session. Yeah, it would. Yeah, it will work in incognito, yes. But it will create a new session. So if I close Edge and I open it again, paste it, I'm going to start again from 1, right? Because the old session went away. It disappeared. Okay, and the same goes, yeah, the same goes for incognito. Okay, now we're almost done here, not quite. So now what happens is how the mechanism actually uses cookies internally. Okay, so let me actually show you that. If I go in here, I go to inspect. Guys, so in inspect, I know you guys use the elements, you use the console. Network is very useful to us. I refresh it. All right, so now it's 11. Look at the requests and responses here. So if I go to, let's go to headers. So what happens is that there is a cookie here. Let's find a cookie. Here's my cookie. This cookie was set the first time I visited the website. The server said, oh, you don't have a cookie? Here's your cookie. Remember it. And then from that point forward, every time my web browser accesses this website, it will send this cookie with the request. Every subsequent request, once the cookie is given, will include the cookie. The cookie will be sent from the client to the server every time the client makes a request. Now look at the cookie value. It says PHP session ID, and there is this kind of random string over here. It actually tells the server where to find the values of the session. You see this session global variable, super global, right, which is an associative array. That information is actually stored on the server side, usually on the hard drive. Let me show you where. See XAMPP TMP. Now let's match this. This one says N9IA. You see this one there, N9IA. Let's find it. N9IA right here. Look at this. See, I found my session. Now remember, this is not something normal user could do. This happens on the server side. So I open this with Notepad. Look at this. It says counter, which is an integer, has value 11. See, that's the data of my session. I could store more in it, but I'm not storing yet anything more. That's what I got so far. But that's my session data. If I go and reload my web browser, let's do it again. Reload, you see, it will send the cookie again. It always will send the same cookie. And then the server will, well, do what it needs to do. And now the cookie saved in my session file is 12, right? And so on. It changes, right? This file saves data of the session every time the PHP script ends. So you see under here, when I reach line 20 and the script ends, whatever changes I made to the contents of session array will be saved to this, not this, to this session file, right? This one, right? It will be saved there. And then when user accesses the website, session start, what it does, it looks for the cookie in the request. It says, well, does the request contain a cookie? Right here, you see, there's PHP session ID right here. Does it contain the cookie? It does, great. Let's find the file and load the data from it into the session super global. That's what the session start does. Okay, There's one more case which I want to show you. Let's see if I can. Can I tell it to, can I delete the cookie? Okay, hang in there. Let's go to settings, cookies, clear cookies. All right. I want to clear them. Where's the clear? There we go. All right, so I'll say clear cookies from the last hour is okay. So I'll clear the data. So that will create a new session for me essentially, right? So I say clear last hour, yes, clear data. All right, good. So now what's going to happen is that I should get a new, where else? Right here, new session. So let's watch this. So I will refresh it. There you go. It started at 1, but look at the details. The request, let's see the headers. The request has no cookie. You see over here, no cookie in the request because I didn't have it, right? I just cleared it. But the server responded. Look, these are the response headers saying, oh, you don't have a cookie. Here is your cookie. Look at this line. We didn't have this before. That's my new ID card coming in. Saying, oh, it's the first time you're visiting. Okay, no problem. Here is your new random. Look at this. You see, this is DGJ3, right? It's a new cookie with new random value saying, okay, you don't have a cookie yet. You don't have an ID card. Here's your ID card, right? Okay, now I will reload it. Watch this. So when I reload, now the request headers include the cookie. Because now my client has a cookie, the one that was given in the previous request, right? So the server receives it and uses it to retrieve that information, right? How many times I have visited. It's right here, DGJ, right here, see, counter 2. Okay. Now in the second time and third and so on, the server doesn't have to send me a cookie. Why? Because I already have it. I don't need a new ID card every time I go to the gym. I reused the one I got the first time I went there. Okay, all right, guys. So that's all I had on this. Any questions?
Apache generates that ID.
PHP, not Apache.
PHP.
Yeah, this is completely PHP. Apache is only intermediary handling the HTTP protocol, access to files, and so on, and it hands off, if it sees that you're accessing a file with extension PHP, it hands it off to PHP interpreter, which is an Apache module, which should be, let's see, Apache modules. There we go. Mode. It's PHP here. I never looked here, so they may be, should be mod PHP. Unless they are using CGI to run it. But one way or another, Apache hands it off to PHP interpreter. And then PHP interpreter, well, does what it needs to do. Okay, all right, guys, so that's all we had on that subject. First thing is we're gonna do a blog. So as you, well, kind of following on the partial homework you got yesterday, we're just going to expand on it. We're going to create a new database. Let's start with this. So in the documents I gave you, there is already a database there. We'll create it together. So we were here in, I think it was here. There we go, your first block, there you go. All right, guys, we're going to follow pretty much this. So let's see. Let's start with database though, actually. Okay, so database, guys, there is a bit of an issue here. This is something I wrote a long time ago. It should be users, articles, comments, right? There's S missing at the end of each of these. We're gonna have to fix that. All right, let's get to it. So go to phpMyAdmin. Go to user accounts. You guys are doing this with me right now, not later, because there's going to be a lot of steps here. So go to user accounts, create a new user account. We're going to call it day02 blog. All right, host name, local, of course, generate and create. Okay, please do that. Okay, so we just created a new a new folder directory, right? Day02 blog. I copied DB, PHP, and styles CSS into it from day 0 first, right? And now I just changed the DB PHP to have DB user and DB name as day02 blog. Host name is the same, and the password I copied it from here as I'm creating the user account. Okay, make sure you do the same. You absolutely need to make sure that the first checkbox here is checked. The second, no, just the first one. When ready, scroll all the way down and press go. Okay, I'll give you guys a moment to do that. Okay, so let's assume for a moment that I created this, right? So now I created user and a password, right? So I have the day2 blog and I have the user, but I forgot to copy the password, right? So what do I do? Well, I go into user accounts. I go to the account I'm interested in. I go to edit privileges, day02 blog, edit privileges, and I go to change password right here. I generate a new password. I save it this time and I press go. That's it. Should work.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. So we got the basics. The DB connection should be okay. We'll test it. We'll see. Style CSS right here. Now let's create a database table. So click on day2 blog on the left hand side, and I just want to make sure we got the right. I'm just going to check something. Just want to make sure we got the right collation. Yeah, we got the general CI UTF-8. Yeah, we're good. All right, so we're going to have create table, and according to the documentation, the table will be actually user s with an S. So user s with an S. Press go. There you go. And we'll do ID, name, email, password. So ID, name, it's not a username actually. Email, and actually, let me just check something, and password, yeah. We have two choices. We can either have a username. So there's username, which is unique, right? I think that's what I asked you, right? I said that the username is made up of lowercase and numbers. So I think that's what it was, right? And then the password to log in, that's one possibility. The other possibility is to use an email and password to log in. Okay, so you got those two, right? Now, in this case, because of the instructions, we'll go with what the instructions say, and you guys already implemented that partially at least. We're going to go with a unique username. So the email needs to be unique too, but also the username needs to be unique. Okay, so we'll do that. So we're going to make one change here so that we're not confused, because if you ask me for a name, I say, this is my name, right? Jerry Boo. Well, not my name, but any name, right? But if you ask me for a username, that is a completely different story. Okay, so in the database, we'll call this username, right? As in the ID of the user to use to log in. All right, so we'll say ID is int, username is varchar. Did I give any limitations there? Let's just check. Probably did. 20. Yeah, all right. So varchar 20. Email is varchar, of course. Is actually wrong here. It's not 150, is 280. Let's see, max email length was 320 characters. There we go. Yeah, so 320 characters total.
Does MySQL support so length?
That is
Usually it's 255 maximum, no?
No, you have, so varchar can be up to 64 kilobytes.
Okay.
You're okay there, yeah. And if you need more, you can use text, but we don't. Varchar 320 for email, and password. We'll see if we can get. Let's just do it 100 for now. This is where I said 64. Let's do it 100. And we will see if we get to encrypting passwords. We may or may not get there on Monday. We'll see. Or maybe I'll give it to you as a homework. But 100 will be safe. Okay, so I got int varchar, 20, 320, 100. All right. All right, we're not quite done here. There's a bit more. So now the ID, the easy part. ID needs to be AI, auto increment, and primary key. So click here, will be created for you. And now we need to create unique keys. Now, the unique index needs to be at least on the username, at the very least on the username. So you click here, you select unique. Okay, there you go. You just say go. Don't type the index name. It will be created automatically. Just say go. There you go. So you have a unique index on username. Okay. Now that's one. But emails, well, you know, in most systems, emails also are unique. Even if a system has a username that is used to log in, emails usually need to be unique as well. Because then if you're doing password recovery, you're sending that to an email, right? It would be weird to have two accounts with the same email. So usually we don't allow it. Not always, that depends on the system, but usually we don't. So for the email, we will also set up a unique index. But when you do that, it's going to ask you, which one do you want? Do you mean that those two columns together need to be unique? Means the combination of the two needs to be unique? Or do you intend to create a separate unique index, meaning that the email has to be unique and username has to be unique kind of separately, right? So composite index with username or single column. We want the single column. They are two independent indices. Okay, so create go. And again, go. Don't give it a name. It will be given automatically. And there you have it. So you have a unique index on username and then independent of it, another unique index on email. That's it. That's it. Any questions on this? Okay, press save. Okay, nothing terrible happened. Seems like it worked. All right, let's keep going. So that's one table. Second table, articles, because it's a blog, so we need to be posting something. So on the left-hand side, create, click new under the day 2 blog, right over here, new articles with an S. Articles. So this one will need one. We're gonna skip one here because we have actually no 1, 2, 3. Now we need 5. Yeah. So you see there's a button here. Add one column. Go. Press it once. So it's gonna add one extra column there to the column definitions. All right, so we got 5 columns here. So the same thing, we got ID. Let's see what else we've got there. So we got ID, author ID. That's going to be our foreign key. The I is uppercase. We're using Java camel case notation. So the I is uppercase in author ID. Right. Then we have creation time. Right. So created TS timestamp. Let's call it, we're going to call it differently here. Created or creation. Created, yeah, that's okay. Created timestamp, TS timestamp. Yeah. Title and body. And now let's give them some types. So ID is an int, author ID is an int, creation timestamp. Timestamp. There's actually timestamp type, which is, should be, there you go, timestamp right here. And then we'll give it a default value, current timestamp. Make sure you do. Which means that when we insert the record, if we don't specify the created TS, it will be assigned automatically according to the current moment. So current timestamp. Then we have title is 100 varchar, so they are both varchars. We could do text, I suppose, for the body as well, but it won't make a difference here. And so let's give the title 100 and body, we said what, 4,000. Yeah, it's a little short, but we'll do fine. Okay, that should do it. There's no defaults here and no indices either. Yeah, we're okay. Okay, so when ready, press save.
We don't need here for
Auto increment.
Oh, sorry, auto increment. Yeah, I do. Oh, yeah, I missed it. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Did somebody already submit? I mean, press save without the auto increment. Anybody did that? I just want to know. Nobody did. Okay, so auto increment, thank you, yes. And then press save. I mean, we can add it later, but yeah. All right, so now we got our structure for articles. We're not going to do the comments yet. That one is more advanced. We may get to that in the next part of the course. We'll see, or Monday. Well, we'll see how we do on Monday. But we're just going to use those two, users and articles. All right, so now.
Excuse me, we didn't specify the foreign key.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. So now what we want to do is we want this author ID to point to user ID, right? That's the connection between the two, right? So the way to do that in MySQL is a little, I mean, it's not hard, but it could be confusing a little bit. So let's do that. So click here, where was it? On relation view. So on top there, you have table structure of articles, and then you have relation view. Okay, you see this? All right, so what I want to do is I would like the author ID to point to day2blog users ID. That's what I want to do. Right, that's the idea. Now, did anybody discuss with you those settings? Cascade said no, no action restrict.
We know just about cascading.
Just
No.
okay. All right, so let's talk about it. So what happens here is that you're going to decide here what will happen if you delete the sort of the master record. What will happen with the dependent record? So, for example, if I have a user registered in the system and that user created a bunch of articles, if I attempt to delete the user, what should happen? That's the question, right? So restrict, which is the default, and it is always a good default. This is the safest option. The restrict says user deletion will fail if this user has any dependent records, meaning if, for example, it has any articles. So if that user has articles, you can't delete that user, which actually makes sense. I mean, in most systems, right? That's the safe option, and that's restrict. Then you have cascade. That's the most dangerous one. I would generally advise against it. Okay, and again, it's not that you shouldn't use it, it's just you should know exactly what it is that you're doing. Okay, so cascade means that when you delete user, all dependent records through this relation, which are the articles, will also be deleted. This is dangerous because the SQL query says delete one record, but you're actually deleting not just the user, but you also would be deleting all the articles of that user in one shot. So you think you're deleting one record, you could be actually deleting thousands. That's why this one is dangerous. Okay, cascade, generally not recommended. Doesn't mean don't ever do it, just means you need to know exactly what it is that you're asking the database engine to do. That's cascade. Next one, no action. That essentially means that you are allowing the relation to be broken. So for example, if you had a user with ID 3, so the user had ID 3, and that user created a bunch of articles. So those articles had author ID 3, according to foreign key, right? That's the match, okay? Then you remove the user. The articles will still carry author ID value 3, but there will be no record to connect to. You're kind of breaking the relation, really. Right? Because there is author ID is 3, but there is no such author anymore, right? It's a possibility. I don't recommend it. I think it's kind of weird because you're pointing to, you're saying, hey, the author is user with ID 3. Well, there's no such user. Your database is kind of inconsistent to me anyway. So not really something I would want to do. If anything, there is a set null. This one actually is not a bad idea. Here's what it does. For this to work, you need to allow author ID to be nullable. So I would have to go to the database, to the table structure over here, and I would have to allow null on author ID. And what it does, if I delete a user, the user gets deleted, the dependent records are not deleted. The articles stay, but their author ID would be set to null. right? Which would be okay, because you're saying, well, you know, these are just articles written by anonymous, right? Somebody wrote it, they removed their account, the articles stay, we don't know who they were, right? Not a terrible thing, but what it does, it complicates your software a little bit, because then you have to account that when you're fetching articles, some of them may have null as the author ID, and you have to deal with that. So your queries will be different. For example, if you're doing an inner join between users and articles, and there is a null, you will not see the article, right? Because inner join requires a join. You would have to change it to outer joins, which allow a null to happen. You're going to say, fetch me all the articles, right? Left outer join onto users, which means you're fetching all the articles and you're fetching matching users. If an article doesn't have a matching user, hey, no problem, you're still going to fetch it, right? You're going to have to, so if you're doing set null, you have to account for that in your software. The same thing goes for no action, by the way, but set null is kind of the better option. Okay, you can do it, not a big deal, but you just need to make sure that your software handles this properly, that those articles, for example, don't just disappear from the blog. Okay, so what's the safest one? Restrict. We're going to do that one. There's no reason not to. And again, you can always change it later. Right, so restrict. Okay, press save. We'll see what happens. There we go. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, let's test it. Click on the your database here, so day02 blog on the left, and then go to designer. Now the designer sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends. Sometimes it has issues. I kind of like it. It's not perfect, but I mean, it's good for visualization. Good to, it has some issues here. You see, it's like this version has issues. Yeah, but it shows me, see, this is the one-to-many relations. This is the many side. You see the bigger half circle, whatever that is, right? And the small one is on the one side. So this is a one-to-many, right? So one user can have many articles, right? Now, you could also theoretically use this to create the relationships between table. I do not recommend it. I don't trust this tool very much. I also don't feel like I'm in control of what's going on exactly. I'd rather do it the way I just showed you, where I explicitly say I'm connecting this to that via foreign relation, foreign key relation. Okay, so this one I use, for example, if I'm doing a project, I want to get a screenshot of the database structure. This one is great, right? This one is great for that. Other than this, I don't use it, just for visualization after I've created what I created. All right, good. So that's what we've got. So now we've got two tables. Excellent. Let's continue. So now it's time to create all the files that we need. So guys, we're going to create all the files that are listed right here. So we've got login, register, index.php, article add, article logout. And I think we're not missing any. I think we're okay because we got the DB.php, I know, but that's fine. All right, let's go with it. Let's get this going. So new file. So we said login PHP, and yes, we'll be copying some code possibly from your previous implementations later. For now, just create them as empty files. So login, register PHP, index, PHP, article add, right? And then we had article logout is the last one, a sec, and logout. Oops, PHP. Okay, I'll give you guys a moment. All right, so register comes first. Let's go to this one. So double click on register. Actually, I'm gonna close them all. Then open. What do I need? Open register is the only one I really need, right? And then what I want to do is I want to use what we did today. You guys remember the Hello HDB, right? Yeah, we could actually use this one. It's not a bad idea. Just yeah, it's not a bad idea. We could just copy this whole thing, you know. So I'm actually just going to copy this whole thing, the hello HDB, and I'm just going to paste it into register. Don't hate me, I'll do that exactly. I'll say register. Register, yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's what we'll do. So I got the require once DB PHP. Let's fix the form. Let's look at the form. So the form was supposed to have, I know you guys have it already, so you can copy paste the chunk. So I had the username. Let's do that. So we've got, I got two more of those. So I got username, right? Then I had email. Then I had password twice. All right. And then types, let's just see that this one is, so this one is username, email is email, the username is type text, the email is type email, password. Name is, we're gonna go this way, we're gonna do pass1 and pass2. Let's keep it consistent, do the same thing as I do, pass1, pass2. The type is password. And let's just change the values. Guys, so for the password, I never put back a password if the submission failed. So I will remove those values from there, those attributes, right? You will hopefully never find a form that when you submit it and it fails, the password reappears to what it was there before. Usually we don't do that. Unless it's not really security important system, then maybe. But generally, we don't. We ask the user to retype the password every time the submission happens. Over here, we'll just do, yeah, we'll just change those. Username, guys, don't call it name because that will get confusing. Call it username and email. And the same thing for the parameters. It will be username and email. That's it. That should do it. So that's my form. Let's see how this behaves. I will go ahead and access that from the web browser. We'll see what I see. So day2blog and, oh yeah, okay. So now here's the thing. When you do that, there is an index.php in that folder. Right, you see there is index.php. If there is index.php, then the web browser will display the index. Okay, look at this, you see? No values for password now. Right, so you see it will display the index.php because that is the default. Whenever you're viewing something that ends with a directory, Apache or any other web server will look for index HTML, index PHP, index CGI, index something, right? So it will display it. So that means that you have to, until we fix it up, right? Until we make the application more complete or we implement the index, we actually have to type it up. So we'll say register PHP here in the URL. There we go. Okay, not bad. I actually don't need that chunk. Not bad at all. I got it centered already, right? There's username, email, password repeated. Yeah, I'm okay. Looks for day 2, looks okay. For your projects, I expect you to do way better. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so if you have an issue with the database access, by the way, we could test it. The way to test it, you put here DB PHP, and if you see an error here, it means there is a problem. If you don't see anything, like I have just a white page, you're okay. Okay. Excuse me?
I have it.
Yeah, I believe you. Yes. So that's what I'm saying. So now what you want to do is you want to, double check, do you have the right user, the right name, localhost, and so on, right? Which you probably do, but just double check it. There's no typos there. Second thing is you go to phpMyAdmin and you go to users, right? And you check the permissions. So you go to, here's my day2blog, edit privileges, and I click on database. See, this one says day 02, I have all privileges on day to blog. I mean, not me, but the user day 0 to blog. See this one, day 0 to blog at localhost, right? Make sure this is localhost, not something else, right? Has all the privileges on day to blog. That's the second one.
Excuse me, after the user's account, I have to go
Excuse me?
after the user account, I have to go where?
Oh, so user accounts, edit
Yep.
privileges.
Oh, edit, okay.
Yeah, I know it's kind of, it should be called settings or something like that, but yeah, edit privileges. And then you go to database and then you check here,
Okay.
right, that it lists your database. Does it or does it not?
No, it's none.
It's none. Okay. So then what you do, you see you click on it here from the list and you press go, and then you press go again to grant all privileges to yourself. Yeah. So you created a user, you created a database, it just for some reason the connection never happened to grant the privilege. Probably maybe I don't know, something was missing during the creation. Okay, so after you do that, should be okay. The third thing, that's okay. So third thing is changing the password. So instead of changing and generating a new one, what you could also do, you could go the other round. You can actually just grab the password that you have, copy this, and just paste it here twice, and press go. Right, you resetting the password to the one you have in your PHP file. Okay, and then you go ahead, of course, and you test it. Okay, so Vladimir, does it still show you an error?
Yes.
So now let's see. So we tested the DB-PHP. Let me just double check where you guys are at. So now let's finish implementing the registration. Right, let's do that one. So let's go to, I can close this actually. Let's go to register PHP. So we got the form modified to display username, email, password. We never have value to redisplay the value for the passwords. We don't do that for security reasons, right? We always ask the user to retype the password. Echo the form, right? So now let's modify it. I'm receiving a submission if, let's just go with username. So if username is being received, then we're receiving a submission. Right, let's fix that up. Let's extract them. So username, email, you know, the usual, right? +1, +2. You may have that code already. You might just copy paste it from the previous one, actually. +1, 2. 1 and 2. There we go. All right, so then verification. So we got a few things here. I'm just gonna actually, let's just say I'll remove it all. Let's just rewrite it from scratch. How about that? Yeah, let's do that. So for the verification, I'm thinking we'll need to verify the username using regular expressions, right? That's kind of where we're driving with this, right? So as I said, in this course, one of the challenges is we're integrating something like, well, we have close to maybe not 10 languages and platforms, but I mean, a lot of them. And one of them is regular expressions. So let's look at this one. So I'll say there is the, somebody asked me once, is that something called having to do with pregnancy? No, because it's called preg match. No, it stands for Perl regular expression. Perl is a programming language. It just sounds funny, right? I agree with that person. Yes, preg match. Anyway, but Perl is a programming language, a very ancient one, that popularized regular expressions, right? That was part of their language. And then it was such a cool tool, other languages started adding support for it to their own libraries. And while I don't really like Perl personally, I've tried it. Nah, it's kind of very chaotic for me. It has this one nice feature, which is regular expressions. So that's why it's called Perl regular expressions, right? And here we're looking for a match. We're saying, well, here's a pattern, right? And try and match it with this subject. right? There are some other optional parameters here which we don't care about. That's not necessary, right? But we're trying to match. We're saying, well, does it match? Okay, so let's do that. So I'll do something like this. I'll say if frag match, right? And I need to give it the regular expression. So I'll say from the beginning, because this is not Java. You guys remember in Java, the anchors were always there, right? But in this case, they are not. So if well, we'll get to the whole expression. So I'll say if what? From the beginning till the end, the username must consist, we said uppercase, lowercase, that's what it was. What did I say? I may amend it a little bit compared to what the homework was. Let's check. Username must, all right, so there's a few here. Username must not already exist in the system. You must check that before you attempt to insert a new record. Username must be at least 4 characters long, lowercase, letters, and numbers. Okay, so it's very restricted. All right, fine, let's do that. So A to Z, right, and then 0 to 9, super restrictive. And the length is, we said 4 to, what was it? 4 to 50? 4 to 20. Right, so between 4 and 20 characters long. Now, I do not recommend that you use regular expressions just to measure the length of a string. That's just weird. But in this case, we can do both. We can check the match and measure the length. Right now, the result returning value, you have to actually be careful here. What does it return? It says here, it returns 1 if the pattern matches, 0 if it does not, or false if an error occurred. So there are actually 3 possibilities. Guys, this is not Java or C#. Functions can return multiple types, right? So sometimes it's an integer and sometimes it's a Boolean. That's it, deal with it. That's the way this works in PHP, right? So which one is good for us? The only one there is 1, right? So what I want to do is I want to say, well, did the preg match return a 1? That's good. If it did not return a 1, so anything else than 1, it's a problem, right? All right, so then let's do error list, append, name, username must be 4 to 20 characters long. Did we do 20 or did we do 4? Let me just check this. What was the structure there? 20, yeah, we did 20. Okay, so because in my notes sometimes I have 40. So 20 first long, made up of lowercase characters and numbers. All right, we're okay here. That's it. And what? Well, knowing what I'm about to do at the display form, you guys remember this thing? There's username and there's going to be email here, right? I know that if there's a problem with username, I should reset it to empty, right? Username equals empty. I mean, most of the time. Sometimes we don't do this. It depends on your intentions, depends on the design, but it's a lot of the times that is the right thing to do. Not always, but a lot of the time. So I'll just do it here. Second thing is I need to filter the variable. So I need to check the email. Guys, to save the time, I'm actually gonna, excuse me here, I'm gonna actually copy paste this chunk because we're only half an hour from finishing. Okay, so I'll check filter var, does it look like an email, right? And we said actually, if it is false, I could do triple, I could do double, doesn't matter, both are fine, right? If it returns false, then email doesn't look valid, set email to empty. Okay, else, now there's another one here, guys. This one is hard. I need to, more work. I need to check. Okay, so it looks like a valid email, but is the email already in use? I could say, hold on a second. I mean, if I try and insert a user and the email already exists or the username already is taken, then what? Well, I'm going to get an SQL error, so it won't work. Well, yeah, but here's the thing. I think I told you that already in the .NET. You never write your application to depend on SQL errors for normal operation. You never do that. So you need to verify in both cases here, because we have 2 unique indices, right? We've got unique we've got unique on username and we've got unique on email, right? So you need to verify them both. You have actually to do 2 SQL queries. I know, it's like, really? Yes, really. Really, really. Really, really, really. All right, so I'm gonna actually just hold on a second. Okay, I'm gonna copy the code here again because we're kind of short on time. I'm gonna give this one as fix me here. Fix me. You have to implement this. This will be on you, homework. One of the homeworks. All right, so in here, I'll check, is this email already in use? And I'll do a query, select. Well, I could just do ID, but it doesn't matter really. From users where email matches the email, right? I need to do the real escape string, right? And then I check. Now guys, the result is not the data. The result tells me, did the query succeed or fail? It doesn't tell me if the query returned a record or not, right? This is just me looking for SQL error, right? If there was an SQL error, display the information about it, exit. Again, we would never do that in a real application, but this is day 2 only. This would always go to a log. All right, then what? Then I need to check, did I actually receive a record from the database? How do I do that? There is a method, a function, MySQLi fetch associative. You give it result, right? And it returns the user record. The user record is in a form of associative array, key value pairs. I could actually do a star here, I suppose, yeah. But I don't really care about the values at all, I don't. What I want to know is, did I get a record or not? If I didn't, let's look at this one. In the documentation, as I said, PHP.NET is awesome. It actually says result. Sorry, return values. Null if there are no more rows in the result set. So normally you actually are supposed to call this multiple times, but because of the query I executed, I know there's only 2 possibilities. Either I got 0 records or I got 1, right? So only 2 possibilities. So if I call this once, if this gives me a null, means the record was not found. If it's anything but null, then that means that the email is already registered. Okay, all right. By the way, you could also try and optimize it. You could actually say, hold on, how about we say where email or username? You could do that too. Yes, I'm okay with that. If you want to rewrite the code to execute 1 query for both email and username, you know, alternative match, I'm okay with that too. I'll leave that to you for the homework. Okay, so then if there is such a record, then set email to empty. Yeah, that's going to be hard actually, because then you're going to have to, you want to know, if you do an alternative, you want to know which text input to set to empty. Is it email or username? Yeah. All right, so that's that. Then passwords. Let's verify the passwords. So if what? First of all, passwords have to match. So if pass1 is not the same as pass2, then we got a problem, right? The passwords don't match. So we'll do, we've had error, we've had error list. Okay, hold on. Actually, let's just bring this up a little. Shorter, because it's the same thing, just a shorter notation. There we go. So error list, right? Append, and we'll say passwords do not match. That's a problem. If they do match, I still have some checking to do, right? So I got to check a bunch of things. I have to check if str length of, let's just go with +1 here, is what, less than 6, or that was the minimum, right? We said 6 to 100. Right, that's what it was, right? So if it's less than 6, or if it's greater than 100, then we got a problem. Or there's a few more possibilities, right? So we got some matching to do, and I'm gonna actually just check this. I think I told you to say, oh yeah, one uppercase, one lowercase, and one digit. That's what I said. And you cannot check that in a single regular expression in any reasonable way that I found. You actually need 3 of them. Because you need a match from each of them separately, not 3 matches, okay? So I'm checking. You see, there is no anchors here because this AZ, so any of the uppercase can appear anywhere inside of the password, right? So does it match 1 letter uppercase, 1 letter lowercase, and 1 digit, right? If they don't, if they fail even one of those, then we'll add an error there to say that the password must be 60 to 100 characters long with at least 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, and 1 digit in it. That's it. And I think that's all there is to it for that chunk. Yeah, so that's the whole verification, right? Quite long. Well, you're still missing this one, but I'll let you guys do that one on your own. So now, if there was, let's do this, submission was with errors, that's an easy one. Display the errors like we did before, and redisplay the form with the username and email if appropriate. That's fine, we're done here, not an issue. Now, if submission was successful, then we need to insert. Now, this one would be a little bit different. Insert into users, right? And we say, well, ID, okay. And then we have, let's just make sure we get the right order of things. So users have ID, username, email, password. So I need to insert them in this order, right? So we've got one more. So the first one was username, email, and password. So +1, right? Because that's the variable. That should do it. There's a comment there. Tom, what is that for? That's for the password.
The verification, yes.
What's the question mark equals there?
I found it online actually. It's it will check from the beginning, but without actually using up anything. So it'll check through to see if there's anything, and then go back to the beginning, and the next section will check, and then the third section will check.
Fascinating. So there is a way. Oh wow, crazy one. Love it. All right, if it works, if it works. Thank you, Tom. I'm actually going to add that as a comment. I'll say maybe. Yeah, that's something to test. I would have to check it. This is interesting. So it's actually, as you're saying, coming back to the beginning every time. And then AZZ. Not sure about this chunk though, because the password can be made up of other characters too. Right, this is just the minimum. So not sure about that part. This I don't think so. The rest maybe. This is where I would, say that maybe this would work, but this one no, because hey, if I decide to put an ampersand in my password, all the better. Okay. Yeah, so you might need to revisit that a little. All right, let's see what else we've got here. So that should be okay. We haven't tested it yet. We're about to. So we got username, email, pass, right? Insert, and then if there was a problem, then fatal error, of course. Otherwise, we'll say, well, what do? We need to let the user know that registration succeeded. And also, what do you do after you register? You log in, right? So we're going to say registration successful, and then we're going to generate a login link to login PHP. Okay, yeah, we're not doing redirections. We already talked about it. No redirections, please. You could just redirect to login. No, you can't. No, we're not doing that. All right, let's test it out. Let's do a register, and let's say hello. Say hello. Hold on, I gotta fix that one. Should be register. There we go. Better. All right, let's try again. Excuse me. Register. All right, so username error, email doesn't look valid, password. Okay, username. Let's try this. Okay, that went away. If I put some special characters in the username, there you go. It shows that there was a problem. Username disappears. Okay, so let's do Jerry123. Email jerry@jerry.com. Password Jerry123. Jerry123. Yeah, that should do it. Register. Fatal error. Failed to execute. Oh yeah. Okay. So now I missed a step. Insert into user. So right, just a typo. Okay, let's try this again. I'll just reload. It should. There you go. Registration successful and clear. Click to login. Let's go to the database. Check the users. We're good. We're good. All right, guys. I need to show you login so you can actually do the rest of the implementation. Okay, so we just need to do the login. I will do the login because we have like 15 minutes left. But the user registered, right? Let's just try one more just to make sure it works. So I'll go back to register and let's do Eva123, eva@eva.com, eva123, eva123, register, and there we go. Okay, now the passwords here are stored plain text, so that's something we should avoid in real systems, but it's good for starters. Okay, so I got 2 accounts. We're okay. Now I'm going to do login with a commentary, of course. So let's look at that one. So the login is a little bit different. Yes and no. So we'll start with, hold on a second. So there's one more thing here. Where's my require once? Guys, this require once thing is kind of customary to do the require once at the very beginning. I mean, because we actually need to do 2 things in DBPHP, because we're actually going to need a session as well. So it's not a bad idea to do it this way. You can add that right now as well. Session start in here. Why? Because I need to connect to the database in all my PHP scripts, and I also need my session to be enabled, right? The session functionality to be enabled in all of my scripts. I might as well do it here, right? So we're going to do session start in the DBPHP, and then I'm going to add it, right? Let's just do this here. And we'll move require once to right here. There we go. That's usually how we would do it. So the require once would be at the very beginning, right? So we're switching to PHP, doing require once, and then we continue on with the rest of the page. Anyway, these terrible things we're doing will all go away in the second part of the course. I keep saying that, I know, but I will deliver on the promise. Once we are past quiz 1, things will be much better organized, because it's not hell, but it's chaos. Yeah. All right, so that's the register. And then we're going to do the same thing for the login. Right. So what would the login look like? Very similar. I could actually, let's just borrow this. I'm just going to borrow this whole thing and let's talk about it. So requirements is good. Title is login, of course. Right. And then the form is a little bit different. I have a username and password. And let's change the name to password because I only have one of them. Submit register. We're good. Yeah, we're good. Okay. So now if I'm receiving, which is I'm getting the username, then extract username and password. Right. And then let's just see if this is the first show display form. Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right, on failed submission, yeah, we'll talk about it. Guys, now with this one is a little bit different. You see, when you're logging in, the situation is a little special. We do not collect a list of errors on login. Okay, did you ever see a website, you're trying to log in, and let's say you have an account, and you're trying to log in, and it tells you, oh, your password was almost valid, but you forgot the digit 5 at the end. Right, it's almost good. Or your password, your username is good, or your password is wrong. Usually they don't say that, right? Because it's a security risk, because then that will make it much easier for the hackers, right, to brute force, to essentially try again and again and again. You're giving them clues as to what they should or shouldn't do. You do not want to do that, right? So all you want to do whenever you're doing a login, you should just have one error message for all the cases. So essentially you're saying, login unsuccessful, try again, recover your password or register. That's it. That's all you're going to do. No varying the answer depending on where the problem was. So, right. So what we'll do is we will add one variable. We'll have one variable. I'm going to call it, let's say, login successful. And I'm going to set it to false. I'll be skeptical. I'm going to say, listen, you have to convince me that the login is okay. So I'm going to say no access unless you convince me that it's okay. So I'm going to go with it this way. So what do I need to do? I already extracted the username and password. That's good. Let's get rid of this. Don't need that. And then I'll say, well, you see, I'm not verifying the username and password. Are they good? I'm just checking them with the database, right? That's what I'll be doing. So if you guys, excuse me, I'm just going to clean this all up in one shot because I don't need it. And then just do what I need to do. So what are the checks? Well, I need to essentially find out if that username exists in the database and then fetch the record, right? And check if the password matches. Now, a mistake that people do here, people make here, is they try to verify password as well as the username in one shot. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. You see, the problem is that if you do this, so you say, select from users where email, and username, right? Like this. You technically, you could do it. It's a terrible idea though. Why? Anybody can tell me why this is a bad idea? Oh, come on. Okay. This one is, go ahead.
Maybe when somebody can hack, they will have two
No.
things.
No, it has to do with the way SQL databases work. Okay, look at this. CI. What's CI? Confidential informant? No, that's not it. That's a different movie. What's CI? Case what?
Insensitive.
Insensitive, you got it. Exactly, case insensitive. Meaning that if you use SQL query to verify your password, especially if it's plain text, the comparison becomes case insensitive, meaning you're losing the quality of the password. Because it doesn't matter if somebody uses a combination of uppercase, lowercase, it all becomes the same thing, right? So especially if you're storing passwords plain text, which you shouldn't really do, right? But, right? You don't want to do that. So what do we do instead? We fetch things by username. Excuse me, I meant, okay, so I messed it up a little bit here. I meant password, that's what I meant. Okay, password. Okay, so we do not want to verify password over here. So what we want to do is we want to fetch a record with the username, right? So using the username, which we know is unique, we're going to fetch the record. And then, of course, if there's an issue with SQL, we'll display it and exit, right? Then we'll fetch the record, right? Then we'll fetch the record. So we'll say, well, let's see. User record is MySQL. I like the associative personally. I recommend you use it too from result, right? So that fetches record. Now this may be a null or not, right? So I'll say, excuse me. So I'll say if user record actually was fetched, meaning it's not null, then I will compare the password. So I'll say, okay, I got the record. Now, is the password in the record the same as the one user specified? Why do I see +1 here somewhere? Oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll deal with that. Right, so it's only if what? If the record was found and if the password matched, then and only then I will set a login successful to true. I might actually move this one over here. Let's do this way, for example. Okay, that's the only case. If the user exists, I have the password matches. Okay, so now I don't have an error list. I just said if not login successful, then I don't have a list of errors. Nope, I do not. I have could do a paragraph or what have you. Paragraph is okay, I suppose, right? Invalid username or passwords, right? Now I could, also suggest that the user can try again, register a new account or recover password, right? But that's a different story. And then we'll display the form, right? Display it again. And that's pretty much it. On successful submission, though, what do I do? Well, this is an interesting one. That's why I needed to do it before we finish for the day. Because on successful submission, what we want to do is we want to use the session. We want to use the session. We want to say we want to save information about the currently logged in user into the session. So we're going to translate the session of. Let's call it blog user. Okay, and we're going to, the easiest way to do it is to actually save the user record in there. Save it in the session. See, the same one we fetch from the database, except for security reasons, we usually want to remove the password. So we can actually, there is set, as you remember, there's also unset, remove something, right? From let's say, associative array. So I will remove the password for safety reasons, I'll remove it. Okay. And then we save it into the session, and then we say login successful. And then we say index.php or something. Click here to continue. I know it's a little bit 1990s. Click here to continue. I know that. That's okay. We'll do better in the future. I promise. Okay, so that's that. Right. Let's see how that works. If it works. Let's test it out. And I still have to show you a couple of things, so we have to really keep going. So click here to log in. There you go. So I say I had registered. There you go. Undefined variable email. Okay, I missed something there in line 45. Let's fix it. Oh yeah, username and yeah, there's nothing there because we never give it any parameters. There we go. Let's try again. Good. Okay, so now let's log in. So I said Eva 1 2 no, it was Eva 1 2 3 Eva 1 2 3. There we go. Login successful. And I could say, okay, so how do I know now that somebody actually logged in successfully? Good question. I'm glad you asked. The way you know is you verify the session. So in the index, for example, here, what I would do is I would do the same thing. As I said, this will begin every file. You have to enable the session, right? And you're definitely going to need your database anyway. So I could check here if I am logged in. How do I know I'm logged in? If I'll just do this. So if is set of session of log user, I could say echo user. Let's just see. I could extract information about the user from the session. I can say blog user of username, echo user else not logged in. Let's see how that behaves. If I go back here, there you go. User eval logged in. Now, see, it knows. Now, how do I log out? let's just finish this off. I really wish I had about 15 more minutes. Okay, here's the logout. I'm just going to copy paste it. Don't hate me. I'll just go and do that. So it's the same thing. I need the session enabled. So I need the require once DB. And then all I do, I just unset log user. That's all I do. I just unset it, right? Remove it from the session, right? So if I access logout, you've been logged out. Okay, that's good. And then I go to index again. See, I'm not logged in anymore. Okay. Now I'll give you one more tool. I'm going to create session PHP. That's for, excuse me, for debugging purposes only. Okay. There we go. All right. So I got, just missed something, session. Print R. Well, that should have
You
worked.
close your PHP tag.
Nah, it doesn't matter. I did not intend to close it. Print R $_session. Yeah, that should be okay. Undefined variable. Oh yeah, I did not enable session. Yes, there we go. Okay, session start. I did not enable sessions mechanism. There you go. All right, so you see, this is my session. The counter that we used, you guys remember 2 hours ago, it's still there because I didn't close my web browser. I did not close all the windows of it. Okay, so if I log in now, let's just do it one more time. Okay, so let's do Jerry this time. Jerry 1, 2, 3. Jerry 1, 2, 3. There you go. I'm logged in. If I go to session, it says here, look, my blog user has ID, username, and email. See, I can see them there. I can use them to display information on the screen. All right, guys, I need to give you a homework. I will push all the code to Bitbucket actually right now because it's time. And and we have to give you homework. Oh no, doesn't matter. Close it. Close it. All right, so homework. Implement the blog according to provided the two PDFs provided. Right. So you already have register, login, log out, right? The next one you want to do is article add, right? Then I would recommend index PHP and then article PHP, which takes a parameter about the ID of the article you want to view. Finally, the last one is add comments to articles as the last items. Okay, that is all. Okay, so your homework is right here, right? Implement, well, all of this. Here's a blog, right? So you start with just the 2 tables, you're good, right? Do everything except for the comments. And if you do decide to do the comments, please call this with an S if you could, right? Comments, okay? All the rest of the instructions are in here. Any questions? We have like 1 minute.
Yeah, have you decided if we're ready for the exam Monday or not?
I already said Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are not. And I don't want to rush it. There is no need. Yeah, the quiz one will be Tuesday. We still have to talk about Ajax on Monday and file upload. That's Monday. Okay, all right, guys. I think you have a fair amount of homework. Remember, all homework is best effort. And that's what I'm asking for, effort, right? Just, do your best, implement as much of it as you can. I would say that these initial things I mentioned, those are definitely doable based on what we just did. It's definitely doable. Comments are a little bit tricky. but I can't get into the details right now. Okay. All right, guys. So I wish you a productive weekend. The code is in Bitbucket, right? I'll see you Monday at the usual time, and we'll look at solutions to it. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you, bye.